Once upon a time, there lived a talented young baker who was ever so lonely. So she mixed together flour and water and a perfectly sized pinch of salt. Creation had risen twice over and been baked in the oven. He emerged as a young man, more handsome than any she had ever seen. He was kind, too, and gentle, and the baker called him Mr. Buckwheat-Rye, for those were the grains she had used to make him. Decided to marry. But word soon spread of such a man. And the queen of a nearby land vowed that she would have him for herself. To find her beloved had been spirited away in the night, and her heart was broken. So she packed for herself 3 pairs of shoes with iron soles and set out in search of Mr. Buckwheat-Rye. Until the first pair of shoes were worn through, and she could walk no further. had walked so far that she had come to the end of the earth, where the hour was always dawn, and the moon dwelled in their palace. What brings you so far from the lands of your people? The moon asked the baker. I seek a man called Mr. Buckwheat-Rye, with hair the color of pumpernickel and eyes the color of a perfectly baked crust. He is my beloved, and he has been stolen from me. The moon thought long and hard, considering all the men they had seen as they shone down on the world. They had seen babies born and trees planted, but they had not seen Mr. Buckwheat-Rye. I'm sorry, my child, they said, but I have not seen your beloved. Perhaps the sun may have seen him in the light of day. And they handed the baker an almond and told her to crack it when she was in need. The baker continued her journey. She walked through thick forests of crooked trees. Where the sun's rays peeked through the branches. She walked until the second pair of iron shoes had worn through, and she could walk no further. She had walked so far that she had come to the other end of the earth, where the hour was always midday and the sun dwelled in their palace. What brings you from so far from the lands of your people? The sun asked. I seek a man called Mr. Buckwheat-Rye, with hair the color of pumpernickel and eyes the color of a perfectly baked crust. He is my beloved, and he has been stolen from me. The sun thought long and hard, considering the men they had seen that day as they warmed the world. They had seen many marriages and crops watered and weeded, but they had not seen Mr. Buckwheat-Rye. I'm sorry, my child, they said, but I have not seen your beloved. Perhaps the stars may have seen him in the clarity of their light. And they handed the baker a walnut and told her to break it when she was in need. Again, the baker walked on, desperate. Over craggy mountains of cold gray stone where the stars shone below as above. She walked until the second pair of iron shoes had worn through, and she could walk no further. She had walked so far that she had come to the palace of the stars. What brings you so far from the lands of the people? The stars asked. I seek a man called Mr. Buckwheat-Rye, with hair the color of pumpernickel and eyes the color of a perfectly baked crust. He is my beloved, and he has been taken from me. The stars thought long and hard, considering all they had seen that night as they shone pale above the world. They had seen many funerals and crops harvested and reaped, but they had not seen Mr. Buckwheat-Rye. I'm sorry, my child, he said, but we have not seen your beloved. Then the littlest star, who had glowed too dimly to be noticed before, spoke up. I have seen your Mr. Buckwheat-Rye. He has been taken far beyond even here to a land across the sea, where he is the captive of a foreign queen. And they handed the baker a hazelnut and told her to break it when she was most in need. Once more, the baker continued walking, and she walked until her feet bled. She walked so far that she came to the sea. And she boarded a boat and sailed. The hull of the boat had nearly worn through, and she had reached a distant shore. And there before her was a castle, looming dark and silent over the craggy land. The baker approached the fortress and was put to work as a stable hand. As she worked, she searched for her Mr. Buckwheat-Rye, but he was nowhere to be seen. In her desperation, she cracked open the almond given to her by the moon. And a golden spinning wheel emerged. When the queen heard of the treasure, she desired it for her own. Go give the stable girl whatever she desires in exchange for the golden spinning wheel, she told a servant, for I must have it for my own. When the baker heard this, she thought long and hard before saying that she heard rumors of a man who was once a loaf of bread, and she wished to see him with her very own eyes and spend one night with him. And so Mr. Buckwheat-Rye was brought to the servants' quarters, but he was asleep, and the baker wept. The next morning, even more desperate, the baker cracked open the walnut. And out emerged a hen that laid silver eggs. When the queen heard of this treasure, she desired it for her own. Go give the stable girl whatever she desires in exchange for the hen that lays silver eggs, she told the servant, for I must have it for my own. When the baker heard this, she again asked to spend a night with the man who was once a loaf of bread. and for the second night in a row, Mr. Buckwheat-Rye was asleep and could not hear the cries of the baker as she pleaded for him to wake. The next morning, while Mr. Buckwheat-Rye was looking out the window, an owl flew by and perched upon the windowsill. "Owl, why do you hunt? It is morning," Mr. Buckwheat-Rye said. "Because your guest, the stable hand, scares away all the mice all night with her weeping," the owl replied. "Who?" responded Mr. Buckwheat-Rye. "The new stable hand. All night she cries, 'My beloved, my Buckwheat-Rye, why won't you wake? Please wake.'" In that moment, Mr. Buckwheat-Rye understood. For every night with his supper, the queen had fed him a special draught that caused him to sleep the whole night through. The baker cracked open the hazelnut that had been given to her by the stars, and out emerged a bronze flower. When the queen heard of this treasure, she desired it for her own. Give the stable girl whatever she desires in exchange for those bronze petals, she told a servant, for I must have them. And one more time, the baker responded simply that she wanted to spend the night with Mr. Buckwheat-Rye. And the queen acquiesced. But when she gave him his draught that night with dinner, he did not drink it, for he now knew the truth. And the servants delivered him to the stable, where they left him there. This time, when the baker shook him, crying, "Beloved," his eyes flew open, and the two made their escape, embracing all the way. Buckwheat-Rye had escaped, she flew into a rage. In her fury, the queen vowed that she would make a man out of bread for herself. She used too much sugar and too much oil, and the creature that came from her mixing bowl was monstrous. back home, and together again at last. The baker and Mr. Buckwheat-Rye finally wed, and lived happily ever after, and no better.